2nd of the 12th. It's December.
Okay. All right. So lovely. Here we go, Sam Jax. Here, back for another episode. What are we going to be chatting about today?
Well, we said that we were going to talk about goals you want to set if you want to make £1 million, didn't we?
Yeah. Pretty much that's it, right? So it's what do you need to write on the vision board in front of you to hit £1 million? And anyone who's going to be watching or listening to this, hopefully through our meanderings and no doubt kind of many side chats we'll end up having about this, is we might be able to piece together a plan to kind of help you get to £1 million. That said, though, caveat, I've not reached £1 million. And neither of you, right? So we're both on like paths to that point.
Let's be clear about £1 million as well, because I know a guy who tells me he's a millionaire and he's not. He's got £1 million worth of property all mortgaged up. I'm like, you're not a millionaire. Like, you've borrowed £1 million worth of debt on your property, but that's not worth £1 million. So, millionaire, to be a millionaire, we're saying in the bag, cash, liquid, like you could withdraw it if you so chose to and swim around in it. Like, £1 million in the bank, which actually means you want to earn a lot more than that, because you're probably going to have paid like 40%, 50% tax on that plus overhead. So you probably actually, this £1 million target we're talking about, you're going to have earned around 2 million or have accrued interest.
So does owning property not count then? Because that's kind of like part of your net worth, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm not putting property in, because there's a lot of people buy houses that go up to worth £1 million. And as well, like the point I'm making is this guy, he may have more than £1 million, but say you've got £1 million worth of property. If you've paid 40% deposit or 20% deposit, okay, you've had 400 grand liquid at some point, and you might have had it in a business.
But you're mortgaged to the hilt, right? Yeah.
All you're actually saying is you owe 600k of debt. And okay, your property is going to go up in value, sure, but it's going to have overheads. And what's a good yield on a property? Like 8%? I don't like property investment personally. I don't think it's good, but that's for another day.
Yeah, that's for another episode. Okay, we're talking about people who've got a net worth of £1 million, essentially. There's a lot of people out there who talk about £1 million turnover and, wear that one with pride and walk that one round with pride. But £1 million turnover, the reality is with £1 million turnover, you're going to need a lot of people to get you to that point, depending on the product, depending on the service, right? A good example I can think of is a small boutique agency I worked at. There were 15 staff plus the managing director. We rented premises in a city, and the turnover of that business was approximately £1 million. Everyone got paid. The boss paid himself a wage, but liquid, being able to reinvest and grow, there was no cash, essentially. It could just tick over, as it were. So there was no growth in that business. Like, new people couldn't get hired. We couldn't move to other premises, even though the landlord made everyone put up with scaffolding around all of the exterior walls for 6 months at a time, doing banging and crashing, where all these poor developers had to sit and do coding. And you'd think on paper, £1 million turnover business, great. But the reality was that it was a business that was stuck, I think.
I think there's a lot to be said, owning that business potentially, which is an agency business, where maybe you're making 20-30% margin on everyone's time and you're doing the management of it. His salary, I'm guessing, around 100k. Like, well, as a decent consultant, he could go and run just an individual consultancy and bring in that without all the risk and overhead. Before we get into like mechanisms of making $1 million, should we maybe discuss why? I have a framework here.
Obviously,
like I have a way of thinking about this that I'd love you to like challenge and pick apart. So in my head, the place to start is with low risk. You want to get the bag, you want the cash in the bank, because it gives you the freedom to take on more risk, to take on bigger opportunities, to do the things you love. Like, that's why you want this money in the bank. And £1 million is just an arbitrary figure. I think £1 million nice, because if you follow like the Mr. Money Mustache index fund investing approach, you put £1 million in the bank, assuming that you've paid all the tax on it, and you invest it, you're looking on average at like 7 to 9% returns in an all-world ETF fund. So you can comfortably withdraw about 3 to 4% of that £1 million every year and never degrade the amount. So you could comfortably have never, for the rest of your life, forever and ever and ever, 40 to 50 grand cash, like take home, forgetting all the tax complications and everything else that do come with that. But that's enough for a comfortable lifestyle, because to get that in a job, you've got to earn about double that in the UK, ish. You'd have to have a 100 grand job, and you've got 100% of your time. So that's why $1 million's a nice number. If that is the frame we're going into, then you say, okay, well, get £1 million, by hook or by crook. It can be as scrappy and startup-y. It can be through work, any which way you want. Get the bag, get yourself free. So then you can take on risk. So that, I think, helps us define the question. What's the quickest, lowest risk, most efficient way to get £1 million in the bank liquid? I feel like that gets us to a better question.
Okay, so obviously I think the easiest way, aside from crime, let's not go down the crime route here, is to win the lottery, right? There's plenty of millionaires who've won the lottery, become million plus liquid cash people overnight, tax-free, as well. I think there's a bit of a curse there with that, though, isn't there? Because you hear about lots of lotto winners who have won that cash, and then squandered it immediately because they've not known how to manage £1 million. Do you remember the lotto lout? No. Do you remember?
No.
Oh my God. What was his name? I'm going to find his name quickly. He famously won quite a lot of cash in the national lottery, the UK national lottery. And then he was nicknamed by the Sun, I think, the Lotto Lout, because he bought a big mansion and then in the back garden he turned it into a banger racing arena. And we just drive. Okay, every possible male fantasy ticked there. Okay, massive mansion, banger racing in the back garden. But, because of where he bought the house and everything, his neighbours complained about him.
I'm glad there are people like that in the world. But we're not seriously suggesting that the lottery is the most efficient. I mean, it's high risk, isn't it? I mean,
it is. Okay, the risk is there, and we talk about risk, quite a lot at this. But obviously there's risk there, okay, because you need to buy a set amount of tickets. You're not always going to win. You might get more chance of being hit by lightning, obviously. But
okay, so I think this is good. This is helpful because we're saying there's an input which we're going to discuss, which is money into your world, and we're going to discuss the mechanisms for doing that. But then really importantly, there's a process that happens so that the output factor, which is this £1 million of whatever currency you're dealing with, sat in your bank liquid. So really importantly, you can't just squander it all. You need to have a process for dealing with the money to make sure it ends up sat in the bank. You could have £10 million come in and end up with none in the bank. So I think maybe this is a good way to talk about it. We've come up with this output figure, £1 million liquid in the bank. We've said there's a process that happens. It might be, pee it up the wall and have a great time, and you won't end up with $1 million. And then there's input factors. So let's get excited about all the potential inputs. So we said lottery. We've said crime, probably not a good idea. Okay, let's get all the bad ideas out the way first.
Become a footballer. You can earn millions every week. That's another way of getting.
I feel like you're baiting me here. You're baiting me.
But on a serious note, I think these things do colour how people perceive millionaires and becoming millionaires in the UK, right? Because whether it's, the Sun named that guy Michael Carroll, that was his name. He's very young, right? They called him the Lotto Lout, right? The king of chavs, right? So there's this association that people of a certain social standing shouldn't have money. And I think that permeates into culture. I think there are a lot of people who think, that's not for me. I'll have a job. I couldn't possibly earn $1 million. And then you've got kids who dream of being footballers. They think their way out to becoming rich or famous is to become a footballer or a pop star, because you quite often see, those type of figures having a lot of cash in the bank as well. It can feel unobtainable, I think.
Yeah, it's a paradigm.
Yeah.
I remember I had a business for a short time selling pianos, as you do. Used to collect baby grand pianos that were wooden and turn them black, and we'd quadruple them in price. Anyway, I remember going to collect one of these with someone I really respected, and we turned up at this huge big manor house, and there was a lawn, like a massive long lawn next to a river, and there was a private aeroplane on it, and there were like 6 or 7 properties on this thing. It was an incredible property. And then the guy came to the door to greet us, and I was like, is this place yours? He's like, yeah, I rent out this field over here, and I fly my little private airplane. I was like, how did you make your money? He's like, oh, in imports and exports, which sounded dodgy.
Yeah, like Mr. Nice import and exports, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, all right, okay, mate. And then took this piano. And then as I'm driving off with this person who I really respect, who I won't name, they go, yeah, but he probably stole it all, or it's from crime.
Yeah.
And I was like, at 20 odd years old, that deflated me, because I was there going, oh yeah, I want a bit of this. I could sell enough pianos, as I was at the time. Like, I could be here. This could be me.
Yeah.
And I think that limiting belief you're talking about, definitely something we want to address. Definitely.
100%. When I started climbing up through the ranks in my career, and I've been really lucky my whole career, right? Because I've worked in like the service businesses. So I've always, whether it was in sales, when I worked in magazines, or in agencies working with other businesses, I've always had the opportunity to go to other business premises, meet bosses, talk to people about their sales and marketing plans and everything. So quite often you do get a chance to talk about money and what a business is, financial plans are and how they want to grow and everything. As a young mid-20s person, being able to do that and go around London and do that was really eye-opening for me, because it made me see just the breadth of businesses that are out there, the different types of people who run them, the fact that there's loads of really normal people just like me who can, run businesses, grow businesses, turn them into $1 million plus. I was also really grateful as well in my career to be able to sit on the board of a agency business that turned over 4 million, like 4.5 million it is, UK, it is, I can't say it, 4.4 million pounds at its height as well.
What were the margins on that? Like, how much, what's the profit?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, out of 4.5, a lot of that was media spend that we put markup on top of. But yeah, like the profit was quite good for that, for sure.
20%?
Yeah, at least.
800k, million quid?
Yeah, I'd say just around about between 15 and 20%, if I recall.
So that's per annum. Per annum, £1 million profit.
At its height. Yeah, at its height. And so we were able to do a lot of investing in that business and really grow it. So when I joined, there were 8 of us. And when I left, there were 120 of us. So we were really able to, go global and kind of meet our big, hairy, audacious goal that we set for being like number 1 independent agency in the healthcare space. And what I learned about going through that process is that the people who run those businesses are normal. They just learn by experience, right? So there's no magic pill, there's no life of crime. And quite often, a lot of the bosses, including my own at the agency I just mentioned, they hung around other people who were quite successful. So they were able to pick up ideas, techniques, see what other people were doing, talk at a high level about business growth, about finance management, about personal wealth management. People lower down the ranks, if you like, just weren't talking about. My boss, who was the CEO of the group, was an ex-trader, ex-London City trader, was on the board of multiple businesses, including Skyscanner, who were a Scottish-based unicorn who got bought a few years ago, and, was part of supper clubs, business supper clubs, where other high net worth individuals sat and chatted business, and when you're in that world, that's how you think. You become that. Your view of everything becomes focused on growth, on cash, in a way that it didn't for me, as someone who just turned 30, just joined the board as a really green person, learning loads of new things. I was still going out for dinner with my friends and renting a house in North London, So I really think you are the people you hang around, and that is what teaches you how to become a £1 million business owner.
Yeah, okay, right. I love this. I see where this is going. So in our input column, we initially got focused on what's the thing you do, because that's a nice, easy place to start. But we're saying also on the inputs, there's this mindset, thing, which gets a bad rap, doesn't it? Mindset, like, what's that? It sounds like bull. But no, mindset is the people you surround yourself with. I mean, what's the saying? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The discussions you're having, like, ultimately, there's a lot that goes into enabling you to do this thing. And then there's the process bit, which again is probably mindset, like, runs through this. I totally resonate with what you're saying, because I very distinctly remember having beers with some mates, and all louty mates, really good guys, like, couldn't speak more highly about them. Brilliant. And I remember letting slip to one of them, like, when I started making over 6 figures, and we were out for drinks. And I hear this from other people at, like, super duper levels, and this was just like, he just expected me to get the round in, which was okay, like, I didn't mind. But then it became the norm, and I was like, this isn't it. And that thing you just spoke about, like, that network, this I think is where there's gold. I'm in a WhatsApp group with business owners, and we're all sort of similar. Well, there's a few that are over the £1 million mark in there, and I love it because there's a guy in there who runs for one of the big UK banks. He runs business banking for businesses that are 10 million to 100 million, like, next level. And you're absolutely right. That chat, like, the information you feed in, the podcasts you listen to, and everything else have as big an impact on your frame, I guess, as to what you think is possible. I'd like to dig into what you were saying about big, hairy, audacious goals, because and the people, because I was really lucky to go around the Bentley factory when I was in my early 20s in Germany. We were making jet engines, and we went and had a look at this factory, and I was dead interested, even at the time as an engineer. They're showing us all this woodwork and the manufacturing process, and I asked the guy giving us the tour, when he was showing us David Beckham's child's car seat that had been custom made. Brooklyn, is it? They made 2 of them, and they had it on display cut in half to show how great this seat was. And I was like, you're cranking out however many cars a day. Who the hell's buying them all? And he went, most of our customers are builders. They're in the building trade. I was like, oh, that's mental note. Service builders. If you're buying £100,000, because we were in Germany, Bentley, and you're in the building trade, like, oh, okay. Business expense sounds like a good one, you know? So I'd really like to pick into, go on. You said you started hanging out with these people. They seem to have these goals. Like, what were they doing that was different from what you were doing?
Well, I think, like, for the past sort of 4.5 years, obviously, I've been around a lot of small business owners, especially those who finished a corporate career and they've switched and, you know, they're running their own businesses.
Can we quantify that? What's a small business? How many £1,000s?
Like, often single business owner, and they're starting from scratch. So for them to earn 50k a year is great. Like, some of them I'm working with, maybe close-ish between 500,000 and 1 million, but nothing over that really. So it's definitely on the micro level. And the difference, I think, between those guys and perhaps like the world I was able to kind of stick my head into and have a look around at, you know, in my kind of London agency days, is the kind of concept of vision, confidence to run with a vision as well, and the confidence to set up goals and work towards them. And I think when you're an employee who then becomes a business owner, you just don't know this stuff. Someone else did your accounting, someone else did your vision setting, someone else knew the process to run with. And then all of a sudden, as a single business owner, an entrepreneur, or someone with a very small team, you kind of have to figure this stuff out. And it's definitely not for everyone. And the kind of common theme amongst a lot of business owners, a lot of agencies as well, is that vision, is creating something that makes people want to come and work for you and drive the business and make it a really amazing thing. And it draws customers and clients to want to come and work with you as well. That concept that my CEO brought up was the BHAG. Never heard of this before. It's the big, hairy, audacious goal. And this is from the Jim Collins book, Built to Last. And essentially you could just say big goal, right? But big, hairy, audacious goal, like, that makes it seem humongous, really big. And it's so big it's got hair on it, right? Like, that's how it should make you feel when you think of it. And a big, hairy, audacious goal is a goal that is so incredibly grandiose that you can't possibly reach it immediately. It's going to take time to get there. But when you do reach it, when you do complete it, fix it, whatever that goal is, you could possibly change the world. That's how big that goal is. I mean, some really good examples of BHAGs from the past, right, that I've got here. Walmart Walmart said that they would become a $125 billion company by the year 2000, and they set that BHAG in 1990. So they gave themselves 10 years to reach that goal. And it was a vision. It was a North Star to set them on the path to becoming this kind of small supermarket group to the behemoth that they are now. Boeing had one in 1950, which I love because we know we're in the future now, so we know how their BHAG played out, which was to become the dominant player in commercial aircraft and bring the world into the jet age. I think they did that.
Yeah, nailed it.
With bells on. Nike's one, I love Nike's one, is they set this in the 1960s. It's really simple. Crush Adidas. Crush Adidas, that was theirs.
Yeah, identify the enemy, go after them.
Yeah. And then Honda, in that other Japanese way, I'm not even going to pronounce this in Japanese, but we will destroy Yamaha. Was their one. Again, I think they did really well. Some are a little less aggressive. I think Merck, the pharmaceutical company, had a really good one, which was transform this company from chemical manufacture into one of the permanent drug making companies in the world. And when we think about Merck now, well, I do anyway, because I come from a healthcare marketing background, they're a drugs company, they're a pharmaceutical company, they're not chemicals manufacturer. So these are goals that can't be achieved overnight. They're going to take time. They should make you feel really uncomfortable when you think about them as well. And the BHAG that we had at my agency, as I said, was to become world class as an independent healthcare agency, delivering digital innovation to pharmaceutical companies, essentially. So I think it was along that lines. Delivering innovative digital marketing solutions to the pharma industry. Something along those lines.
Memorable.
It's been a while. I tried to purge as much healthcare stuff from my head as possible after I left that world.
I love them. I love them because it's exciting, isn't it? Like you can get motivated. But so that's a frame. It sounds like you could start a company and go after something massive, like really big. There are other frames though, right? Like you spin to win. So you put your fate in someone else's hands, you play the lottery. That's a frame. What was the other one that we said? Go become a footballer, okay, become a sports person and get paid. Like go get a job, a high-performing job. Can I suggest another frame? Like
Sure.
So I think there's a world where you just go get a job. Go and get the highest paying job that you can find. Like in marketing, or I think engineering is a really good one, especially because the world is becoming exponentially reliant on engineers, software engineers specifically, and the understanding of the technology is exponentially decreasing because it's getting more and more complicated. So you can go and be a mediocre engineer in the UK and go and get a 100k role, not as a permanent job, like as a sort of consultant, very tax efficient way of doing things, because you can have all kinds of other expenses involved, and including your investment. But let's go say you get that 100k role, which is very, very, very achievable when you look at the global market. I think that's probably 200k is also achievable. Let's just go 100k achievable role.
Yeah, but will it make you a millionaire though, Sam?
Well, yeah, so this is where it comes into the process bit. So your agency type approach, I'm saying we're looking minimum 5 years before
Easily.
Potentially, yeah, okay, minimum.
Before you could release cash out of that business that would give you enough capital to then allow you to invest in other businesses or properties that would then take you on that chain reaction to becoming a millionaire, is minimum 5 years. You're not going to do it in 12 months, right? And the people that do have those businesses that have hyper growth in a year, that they're unicorns. They don't happen every so often. You do have to lay the foundations down.
So let's just use that as a frame. Like the cons are, you're going to have to outlay some cash or time. You're going to have to take some risk, even if it's just, well, I'm going to do this for 6 months to build up my client base, find people. I'm going to, cut back on all my spending, and then I'm going to use that revenue for growth. So there's no spare cash. So essentially you've started a job for yourself, which you're hoping as time goes on, the size of that, the value of that thing will pay out, and will that capital invested will result in your £1 million payout. I'm saying there's another route where you go get this contract type role on a 100k, and then we look at the process bit. Okay, well, what do I do with my money? Let's say you can, there's a wet finger in the air, take out 50 to 70% of the total funds that come in after all the taxes and everything. Well, in the process world, if you can cut your cloth, cut your expenses such that you're walking away with 70k and you can save about 50% of it, 35k a year, cash saved, 10 years of investing that, plus compound interest, you're up over £500,000, including the compounding interest. And because you actually only need about 50% of that, after about, I think the maths is about 16 years, you're going to be at the £1 million point. So 16 years of career, no stress, no agency, 40-hour weeks, 5-6 weeks holiday, no staff overhead, and this nest egg is building all the time. And then you can go and and that's just invest it, Mr. Money Mustache style. You could increase your risk profile and just go buy a cash flowing business that's already, go and buy our vending machine business we spoke about the other week. Go buy a laundrette, go buy any of these cash flowy businesses. Like I'm saying, you've got in that early stage to manage the risk of what you're doing. I'm saying it's starting out, if you, depending where your starting point is, if you're 17, 18, still at home, go for it. Like, you've got zero overheads. You can always crash at mum and dad's. There's always going to be a hot meal a day there for you. You've got your laptop, internet's paid for. You've nothing to lose. But if you've had a bit of career, which is where I think a lot of our audience is, you've had a bit of career, you've maybe got a few kids, you've maybe got like a bit of a family to support, you've got some overheads, like you can't just take on all the risk.
No. And also the other thing as well, right, is there is no job that you can guarantee will employ you for 16 years anymore, especially because of the speed and rate of change in industry at the moment. So you were talking about engineering, we could think of software as well. Software developers from 16 years ago were working on, what were they working on? They were all on apps. Do you remember, Sam? Because the Apple Store had come out. Yeah. So everyone pivoted to apps. No one was working on HTML5 back then.
Yeah, and progressive web apps weren't a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. PWA wasn't a thing. So like that, there's loads of tech that isn't around now that has to be part of your kind of stack, And then there's the old guys the old guard, if you like, who, 15 years ago was still, all .NET developers, and this new world was just like really horrible and alien to them. That is going to happen and come again.
But that'll happen in every role, right?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. I mean, same with engineering as well. But can you guarantee that you will remain £100,000 a year consultant? You can't. Life changes, and all of that. So I feel like there's a mild element of risk just relying on that. But it's the safest route, absolutely, because people are always going to need to find people to help them in their businesses. Businesses will always employ people. That's the thing. If you're going to do it as a business, though, I think the reality is, as we were talking about with the BHAG, is like you've got to set aside a few years, to be able to turn over $1 million. Like just kind of like costing this out on the calculator right now, is that if you was to have $1 million turnover year, right, that would mean that you would need £83,000 months. Totally doable. Totally doable. I've worked at many businesses where that was just like very normal. But it depends on how many products you're selling, right? So let's just say you're selling units of your time, and you can only sell 40 units of time a week because there's only 40 hours a week or whatever. So you've limited yourself to 160 hours a month, potentially. So, to kind of make that every month, you'd need to hire each of your hours out for 500 quid, 520 quid or whatever. Not everyone's going to get to that point where, number one, their time is worth 500 quid an hour. And you can find people who are like, yeah, you are the expert. I will happily pay 500 quid an hour to. That takes time, skill, reputation. You've got to build all of those up. And then the second being, are you genuinely going to fill every single hour up with consulting work like that? Probably not. It's more likely at 500 quid an hour, someone's going to hire you for a day, and then you've got to prep for that day, and then you've got to drive to that day, and then you've got to follow that day up and do notes. So actually, the value of your hour goes down a little bit there as well. So like that's just one way to think about it is, what is it that you're going to be selling to reach $1 million? And do you have the time and the resources to hit that revenue goal?
Yeah, totally with you. So I think we've had this conversation before about, what do you want to sell? Do you want to sell your time? Do you want to sell your risk? Do your risk appetite? Do you want to sell a physical product, or do you just want to put your money in and let your money work? And I guess if we were to use that framework to summarize the frame I just mentioned, we're saying, well, sell your time with a relatively low risk profile, and then free up some of that cash so that your money goes and works for you. And but perhaps the other category business we're looking at with an agency or something, well, you're selling someone else's time and your time, but there's a bigger risk profile. But if you were to weigh that off against the rewards of the other ones, I mean, you said that business that had been going, 5-10 years, was doing 4.5 million, had £1 million potential profits at the end per year. Okay, so I don't know how many people owned it, 3, 4, £250,000 each. It's going to take 4 or 5 years for them to get that £1 million exit. Okay, but maybe that took them 15 years. So if we start bringing into the mix this timescale thing, if you were to try and do it in 2 years, right, how would you do it? Like, what are the mechanisms there for? It's not going to be an agency, is it? It's not going to be a job. It's going to have to be some kind of product.
Yeah, and also a product that doesn't need too much labor attached to it as well. And so, you can see why drop shipping or course creation, both as types of products, have really exploded in the past few years online, because drop shipping, where you basically set up a store, people buy from that store, and it's automatically dispatched from, a warehouse somewhere direct to that user's address. There's no effort on your part aside from the marketing, right? And if you can find a product that's really bang on trend, it's low cost enough so the margins are there and you can earn from those margins, and there's very little hassle between the point of purchase and the delivery, then great business there. You can see why people have really gone after it. Affiliate marketing is another one as well, which, just really annoys me. I hear it like lauded online as the way to make a lot of cash. Essentially what it is, right, is when you provide links to someone else's stuff on your website or you promote it, but you still have to promote it.
Yeah.
Affiliate marketing is great when you already have a really big audience and someone comes to you and says, oh, would you mind sticking a link to our stuff in your things and we'll give you a cut of the sales? But for someone who's just getting into new business and they're like, how can I make money? Oh, I've seen a course on doing affiliate marketing. I might do that. Where are you going to start? You need to give yourself months to build up a profile on search, and have your website get known for that keyword. It takes months, if not years, to build up really big social media followings. I think we're past the point where you can grow your TikTok from 0 to 1 million. That was lockdown time. That is gone now. That is past, and there's no other kind of real hyper growth social media platform like that around at the moment. You could go viral, but that's not a business model. Going viral that's like going back to I might win the lottery.
Yeah. Let's break this down a little bit, because I love this. This gets me proper excited. So let's say that you've got some low risk income earner in the background. So you've got a bit of time, you've got a bit of money, and you're like, okay, I want to go for something and I want to see gains. I'm willing to see the big payout in 5 years, but I want to see gains in the first year or two. So what we're saying is you need to build traffic, audience, potential buyers. You have to get access to a marketplace, and then you need a product. And we're saying we're not that fussed about the product. It's just going to match the market. It could be someone else's product. It could be a digital product. But the point is that product has some criteria. It's low overhead for you to sell. You're not responsible for fulfillment, and there's not all this back end cost. So really your business lives in the front end which is customer development. So let's get super specific. Let's say there's two options. You could either build a personal brand, which is, kind of a bit of what you and I do, or you could build a business brand, right? Fastest way to go build that brand. What are the hacks that we know about? Because they're the tactical things that you can go and do. I think this would be an interesting building public thing for us to do. If we're saying 2 years to make £1 million, that's what, 125k a quarter. And that's not even take home. That breaks our own rules, because you're actually only going to walk away with about half of that after taxes. So you're probably looking at more like £250,000 a quarter. How are we doing it?
100% audience building. I mean, when I started out on my own, so I left the world of being paid and started my own business 4.5 years ago, that was. I had no audience online. I barely used Facebook. I just mostly hung out on Twitter. That was my thing. And I had run a YouTube channel in the past because I really love video and video editing and everything. And I'd earned a little bit of cash out of that, but I just started from scratch. And my audience now, approximately, I would say, with my email list, my followers on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, is probably, I want to say, 13,000, right? So
Good going. Okay.
pretty good. I earn money out of that audience as well. So when I launch a new product online, like I've just relaunched a membership product where people can just like join me weekly and just get mini bits of training about online marketing and basically the stuff I do in the agency, and then I can just give it to a little community. I was able to launch that directly to my list without spending any money. It's got to a point where if I do a launch, I'm down to the percentage I know of what it will convert on my list.
Do you mind sharing that? I'm going to ask, what's average customer transaction value? What percentage are you converting? Like, I want to know these figures. This is like asking a guy his inside leg measurement. Like,
well, let's talk about because the new membership is so new, so I can't really report on that yet. But in the last iteration of the membership, that turned over in kind of 1 year without the service stuff on top, like maybe 120,000. And I would promote that in Facebook using like pop-up Facebook groups, like 5-day challenges and that type of thing. And if I could get enough users into a 5-day challenge, I knew I'd convert at 5.5%.
Of the people in the 5-day challenge?
Yeah, 5.5%. It was really consistent.
So 13,000 audience, like what percentage of those are getting into the 5-day challenge?
Yeah, so around anything between 500 and 1,000 users would consistently join those challenge groups. And then out of those challenge groups, I'd convert 5%, 5.5%, yeah.
So it's like 5% and then 5%, about 5% of your audience, give or take, and then about 5% of that 5% convert. So you're getting 25 sales out of 500 people. So 25 divided by 10,000.
And then annually, those users would be worth, I don't know, approximately like £800 to £1,000 annually.
How many times a year are you doing that challenge? 4 times?
Yeah, approximately 4 to 5 times a year, yeah.
You said 4 times for easy maths. So you're looking at, you convert your audience at about 1%.
The total audience, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is, by the way, 1% is very standard in terms of online conversion. So, but the thing is, I had to build that audience up. And so I never went straight in and was able to turn over a 6-figure membership, right? I started out with 100 people joining me and converting 1 or 2 out of that. And then on to the next one and converting 1 to 2. And that actually took me a good year, 14, 15 months to build up. And I had to invest a lot of effort to procure people via ads to join my list and kind of get value that way.
So the maths that I was trying to do was like, if you work on converting 1% and you were saying like one person was worth what, about £1,000 a year?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay, so £100,000 would mean that you need 100 people per year, and that's 1%. So 100%, 100 times 100 is 10,000. All right. Yes, that this all checks out. So to get your £1 million, you'd need 10 times that. So you need an audience of 100,000.
Correct. And I did, just to be clear, right? I did have, a milli as a goal, as my BHAG for this membership, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it in a year. And the reason why is because I didn't have enough capital to put into ads to convert people onto my list and get them in my audience. After each promotion, I only had so much capital left over after paying myself and Sometimes I didn't pay myself though, just to be clear, to reinvest. And without external investment, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I was able to get PayPal working capital, and the bank helped out a little bit during lockdown with like bounce back loans. So I was able to kind of continue growth like there. But I would have needed a lot more cash to get to $1 million. But I knew the formula, and I knew if I could spend this much on ads, I could bring this amount of people in. But I just didn't have that.
This is interesting because I think we both know who Justin Welsh is. Do you know Justin Welsh? You know who I'm on about?
Tell me, who is he again?
He's an online content creator. I think he used to have a director role in some firm. He's an American dude. I think he's late 30s. Seems like a perfectly nice guy. A solopreneur with a VA, maybe 2 VAs.
The Saturday Solopreneur, is he?
The Saturday Solopreneur. So he has a newsletter. He has an audience, he reckons, of about 40,000. And he massively, massively engages his audience on LinkedIn and now Twitter. And he reckons he's doing about £4 million a year. He reckons in his first...
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, in his first 3 years, he was operating at about 98% profit margins, which totally makes sense because he's basically selling these 2 digital products, how to create content on LinkedIn. He sells these products at a couple £100, and then he sells his time out, I think about $7.50 an hour, and then he also places ads in his newsletter. Now, I've also looked at Sahil Bloom, who's done this. Have you come across Sahil Bloom?
Love Sahil. He's done a really good guide about BHAGs, by the way, on his Twitter. So
Okay, so similar approach. I guess if we were to break down what we see them doing, they're probably spending about a day a week on content, ish, maybe 2, and then they're selling one single digital product for a few £100, maybe even up to £1,000 or dollars. They're good because they're Yanks. They work in dollars. So I think where we're getting to is like this audience building is the skill at the moment to hack, right? So drilling down into this, like I think we could discuss the process of managing your money and looking after your money so you can save it all. I think
how to do it.
Hacky skills.
Well, I'm really lucky, right? Because I actually have insight into an entrepreneur who's doing like inside info about an entrepreneur who is already doing this. You know Helen Pritchard at all? She's called Helen Tudor now since she got married.
Seems like a lovely lady.
Her product is get leads from LinkedIn, and it's one course basically. And I think it retails around, I want to say £2,000. But she has famously talked about how that product earned her £1 million turnover. It helps. Yes, she has a big audience, but she didn't before. And Helen, went on this journey where she built up her audience, connecting with as many people as she could per day on LinkedIn who were the right job title and had the right description in their profile of people she thought she might want to work with. And then she made sure she put really clearly in her LinkedIn headline how she could help them. And she just found she got loads of leads out of LinkedIn. I think possibly she was doing something innovative on LinkedIn before it became the norm now, because I'm saying this out loud and I'm sure people listening and watching this going, yeah, I do that anyway on LinkedIn. But people weren't. People were using LinkedIn as like a CV.
This is like 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. So
she started doing this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure. So she was able to build up her LinkedIn following to, I don't know, 45,000 or something. And, her list is huge, probably equally as big, at this point by now. She's maxed out all of the kind of friends that she could have on her Facebook, and she's got more people following her. So she's probably in the range of, close to 100,000 plus with her audience.
And so the £1 million mark.
That is what creates a £1 million business, is when you've got an active, engaged audience. But she doesn't just have an audience that big. She physically goes to the place they are at online. So a lot of her people live on Facebook. Whether you love it or hate it, she knows that's where her people are, because they are people who are scared of LinkedIn. So she goes to Facebook, engages on Facebook, and then brings them over to LinkedIn.
Sure. So I want to break this down a little bit into the tactical, practical, like you're going to go do this. So we kind of spoke about these guys who are like just creating content and it seems to have an audience and that seems to convert into a product, but they build that audience. And now we're saying, okay, well, there's a way of manually reaching out to people like this, because we said like the conversion rate's about 1%. So to make a sale a day, which isn't going to get our figure, but that's 100 people. And you're not going to cold outreach, presumably. You're going to try and interact, and you need to get this network effect going on. But let's say you're doing 1 a minute, that's 100 minutes, more or less 2 hours of effort to get one sale, assuming that you can convert absolutely. And actually what we're saying is, this is audience building and whatever else. So let's say I managed to create a spreadsheet with, a list of 1,000 people in that I think, okay, these are my ideal customers. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is a bit of a rhetorical question. Not a rhetorical question. Like, I have an answer, but I'd like you to give your take on this. Like, how are we building an audience from scratch?
It depends what you're selling, right? So if you're selling a product, that's really different from selling a service, right? But both of them are going to have a ideal customer, and both of them are going to have a problem that is solved. You need to make sure you create content that talks about that. Right, you have to lead with talking about your customer's problem first. You can't rock up building an audience going, "I'm so amazing." Like, you can't do that. You can't talk about yourself, right? You can use content about yourself to build up the proof that the answer you're giving to help your ideal customers is correct and it's got gravitas and experience attached to it. But you really need to go and talk about the problems that you're solving. Do what Gary Vee does.
How are we putting that in front of those people? Like I follow Gary Vee. Don't remember how I came to be following him.
I can't remember either. Probably YouTube, You need to go to where your ideal customers are online, right? So whether you love it or hate it, if your ideal customers are on Facebook, mine are, by the way, because I do Facebook ads, so people are there already. You go and hang out on there. You go to where the town halls of where people are, and you stand in the town square and you become helpful and you get your name known. You build up your reputation. If we're talking about virtual, it's no different from putting the products that you're going to sell in the back of your van and going to the local market and putting them out, because people are going to go to the local market and buy from you. So it depends what you're selling. And if you're selling a product where people are mostly going to be putting the search term into Google to find it, you go on Google, you make sure you're running paid ads. If you've got a fashion product that's aimed at 21-year-olds, you should be on TikTok right now.
Okay, let's define it then. Let's do a case study. Like, let's say our product is a short course with maybe an ebook or a download, how to make £1 million in 2 years. Let's make that our product. How are we going to get it in front of people? What town halls are we going to go to? And when you say town hall, are you talking about a Facebook group here?
Facebook groups, yeah, or WhatsApp groups. Who's our ideal customer, Sam?
Let's say business curious, so they already have a job and they're thinking about. I think there's a few different customers. Business curious, they've already got a job.
Let's pick one, because you've only got a finite amount of resources, right? So you can't run several marketing strategies at once. You need to pick one and do it really, really well, right? And then you can feed into other strategies. So pick one ideal customer.
Okay, so let's pick one customer avatar. I think we should target business owners that are currently selling a bit of consultancy. Maybe they've tried a course before and now they want to, they're doing between 50 and 100K. They're like, yeah, I wouldn't mind making £1 million. I kind of get the mechanics of it. I've done a bit of digital marketing. I've done a bit of content marketing. I have had an email list, but they're not really doing anything with it. Like that kind of person.
Okay, so you need to get inside the skin of that person and understand the psychology and the behavior that they're doing online, right, at the moment. I do know that avatar really well. And I know that the influencers they're following. So because I know the influencers they're following, I also know where those influencers are marketing online at the moment. So great example, Amy Porterfield, who does email marketing courses, right? She spends so much on advertising and is so prevalent that it's very likely that your avatar has seen her online and maybe like downloaded one of her lead magnets or something like that. So that's great, because we can then target that user with Facebook ads, because there's an audience in Facebook ads that allows you to target people who've looked at Amy Porterfield or interested in Amy Porterfield, right? And they're probably not going to be on TikTok, and they're unlikely to be on search, because when people are searching for answers to that stuff, they're not looking for a paid option. They're going to look for blog content and info content. So if you want to find that person quickly, you run ads, maybe on Facebook and Instagram. And then if you want to build up a slow burn with them, you write blog content and create maybe YouTube videos, because they're going to be searching for answers to their questions. How do you make £1 million out of these people? So how do you make £1 million? Well, you need to get enough of them into a room together on a frequent enough basis that you can pitch your product to them, and then a small percentage of those people are going to buy, basically. And typically online, the mechanisms are like online webinar, where you get people to come to a call and you talk about a problem, you solve the problem, you show some value, you talk about your expertise and your history, and then you pitch at the end and they can decide whether they stay or not. If you got 100,000 people into that group and converted 1%, great, you've converted 1,000 people. If 1,000 people spent $1,000 on your course, or £1,000 or whatever, you could make £1 million, right? Unlikely you're going to do that straight away is to get 1,000 engaged people onto your webinar. Chances are you'll start with 100 for the first time. So you have to map that trajectory upward. So, each time you run a webinar, you want to aim to get more people in. So by the time you do your fourth or fifth that year, you've got enough new people in that you can convert from. But that's potentially how you could do that.
Yeah, I have a theory on this because I've seen that model play out and it looks great. And I look at Justin Welsh and Sahil Bloom and some other people in that world, and they have this kind of they're less accessible because their approach is they do the content bit, they do the audience building bit, and they don't do a webinar. The only way you're going to get to hear about them is on podcasts, YouTube, it's like on their terms. They're less accessible. And then it's, well, you can get my email, you can have that. And if you want to buy my products, here they are. But you want a webinar? No. Like, I don't do webinar. Like, I just wonder, do they is that because they're
no. In the beginning they did. All right, go and look up Amy Port. Yeah, go and look. They all did. Go and look up Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield are great examples of this. Go to YouTube and look up their channels and then scroll all the way down to some of the first videos they did. They all did webinars. They all did the classic stuff back in the day. Like, just because they don't now is because they've chosen to position themselves in a much more unobtainable way to put up the price and the value of access to them. And that is definitely the right thing you should do as you get more successful, because you find as you start earning more and you start growing your business, you can't answer. Like, people must hate me in my business. I take days to email people back sometimes. And I'm only turning over 6 figures, right? So, that is totally understandable for those guys. But they can add more value then. So they actually can sell less, and their conversion rates can be lower because the value of their products is much higher.
Do you know what I think would be awesome, right? The figure's great. I would like, and I think, I've started a challenge like this before. I would love, we talked at the beginning, bring it full circle about the 5 people, you are the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. Like, this is a big thing for the mindset. I would love a WhatsApp group with people that want to do this. I'm going to call it audience hacking, because... Okay, you said we could pour some money into the ad machine. Great. Don't want to pour some money into the ad machine.
I would say that. I run an ad agency. What you do, though, is then you have to balance that with the time that you're willing to give up. So either you spend money or you spend time.
I think for this episode, we're probably more or less there. But I would love to do an episode on audience hacking. Like, what are the hacky ways? Because I've heard about quizzes, I've heard about follow-unfollows and I've seen those not work very well, and that sounds really horrible. Quizzes sounds like a really smart, viral way of doing things, or a more viral way of doing it. I would love to do an episode on just all of these techniques. Where do they rank on the ethical? Are they get started? Are they long-term strategies? Because ultimately you want this consistent thing, but even when you look at Tim Ferriss's stuff, if you read the Bible and read some of his blogs, he got the flywheel spinning initially by attending South by Southwest, bought all the writers drinks, had a chat with them, got featured on a few blog posts, and this is when that was the mechanism in. He did some real manual, gnarly to get the flywheel going, and then it took off. And I think that first 10 to 50,000 followers, I think that's where the hacky skills live, and I'm all about it.
And to be fair, right, one of the things I was going to say as well about getting to £1 million is there's definitely an element of serendipity there, right? But you make the luck by connecting with more people, with opening up opportunities for yourself, essentially. If you don't go out and connect with, the 100 people a day like Helen Pritchard was doing or whatever, or you don't run ads, so you tell people that you're open for business and you've got something to sell, you're not going to get that growth, essentially. So you do have to be active, whether it's with your time or kind of whether it's with your money. And just naturally, you end up opening up a world of possibilities there, essentially, that would enable you to maybe move a little bit quicker to turning over 1 million quid in revenue. There's so many so-called lucky overnight success stories. They're not overnight at all. Like, there's been years of grind, right? But those years of grind have opened up extra opportunities for growth.
Do you know the product I think would be cool off the back of this? Let's call it the $1 million calendar, which is, here's a calendar of activities, time blocked out, couple hours a day, or whatever the time needs to be. Do these activities, and this will get you to the £1 million mark. I feel like that's because we're saying, well, there's a route to do it here. People have done it. Build an audience. These are all the techniques for building an audience. Go do these things every single day. Go do these things every single day. Sell this type of product. Go build that type of product and sell it. Then just go do these things. It's a job. Like, it's a set of activities. But I don't think that exists anywhere. I don't know there's a blueprint for this.
Yeah, but I see a lot of people in the online product world, right, who do sell frameworks, right? But the thing is, there's a lot of businesses out there who don't want to be that consistent, Sam. Like, they don't want to put the grind in. I talk to them, and it's like every single day you've got to show up and post. Did you show up and post last week? Oh, no, well, the kids and I had something going on. Like, there really is a mindset there to wanting to kind of get there.
Sounds like an opportunity to me. There's a service.
And if it was a planner, it'd be like this. It'd be like, you're going up, down, back up again, back down again. It would be the most jagged mountaintop ever. And then right at the top, the biggest peak would be you hitting your BHAG, right?
That's cool. I reckon that's
Let's do it. That's Christmas 2023 sorted, yeah.
I think we should be kicking off our New Year's goals right now, personally.
Well, what are you thinking about for your New Year's goals? What's your BHAG for 2023?
3 million's my goal for 2023. I think it's achievable. I think it's within reach because I've done a bit of this climbing the mountains. I think it's very doable. I've some big stuff happening next year. So let's get realistic. I think £1 million turnover in a new venture. So like not one that I'm already involved in because a couple of them are already there would make me happy. This digital product world 2023. So that's not very specific, is it? I'm going to come next time with a specific goal. And then I'm happy to just build it on this podcast and share exactly what I'm doing and join other people that want to do something similar. Like, want to build a bit of a crew that are doing this audience building thing.
Exciting. For me, like, to hit £1 million next year, I don't think is realistic in my business. I've given myself a 2-year goal to get there. So I'm halfway through that 2-year goal at the moment. But I have questioned quite a lot just to bookend all of this, right? Do I actually want to turn over £1 million in my agency business? Like, am I interested in that? And I must say, I am not at the moment because I don't have the infrastructure to get there. So a lot of my time would need to be spent on hiring and training. And then once that's embedded, there's no guarantee that we would hit that £1 million. So I think I'd have to reshape my plans in order to hit £1 million a lot sooner.
I gotta say, this is why I love Justin Welsh. It's him and a VA, and he shares his calendar. That's how he's running his business. It's very efficient.
You can see why it's tempting for people, really.
Sahil Bloom did it in 2 years, and he's now tens of millions. So what did we talk about this episode?
So we talked about how do you hit £1 million in your business. We talked about some of the different ways that you could do that, including winning the lottery. Then we got sensible and started talking about how you could do it in a business as well. And I also talked about the concept of setting a big, hairy, audacious goal to help you get there as well. That's like a North Star of goals. And then we sort of drilled down and thought about some of the mechanics of how to earn £1 million in a year based on some of the more efficient, high profit products that we both know about as well.
Yeah, how to make and lose £1 million. That's the summary of it. I think we got into the nuts and bolts of audience building, how to do it well, how most people do it. But ultimately, why do you want £1 million was really where we came.
Yeah, and that was quite interesting. And we should probably talk about that mindset stuff a little bit more in the future as well, because is too much money a bad thing? Or is it right for everyone? I don't know. Like, I don't know, like maybe we could talk about the difference between, well, real businesses and hobby businesses, right? All right, that was a good one. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow us and share this with all of your friends. And you can follow us on Twitter as well. I'm Hey Vicky Jakes, and you're...
I am at Sam Jacks, and if you're listening on Apple Podcast, please give us a rating and put the comments in, because
5-star.
We saw that a lot of the audience is on Apple Podcast, notice, but please head over to YouTube, because that's where we're trying to grow, and like, subscribe, pop in the comments, how would you make £1 million? What are your goals, and where are you at with your business size? It'd be very interesting, and maybe you want to join our little WhatsApp group of audience builders. That would be interesting.
Doom. We could call it the Lotto Lout wannabes, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could.